The red emergency lights flashed across the command center of the Zephyrian flagship. Admiral Cathara stood before the massive viewing screen. His forearms crossed behind his back as he watched the battle reports stream in. Each new update brought worse news than the last. "Sir, we have lost contact with Battle Group 7, reported Commander Vextel from his station. His voice carried the strain that all Zephyrians felt when facing defeat. That makes 3 full battle groups. In the past 6 hours, Cathara closed his large, dark eyes for a moment. Battle Group 7 had contained some of their finest ships and most experienced crews. Now they were gone, consumed by the terrible enemy that had appeared from the void between galaxies. The Void Swarm, as the scientists called them, moved like a plague across space. They ate everything in their path and grew stronger with each system they destroyed. "What about the Centauran fleet?" Cathara asked. "Still holding position at the outer rim, sir. But their logic computers cannot find a solution to this threat. Admiral Vexan reports that every battle scenario ends in total defeat. The Centaurans were known throughout the galaxy for their perfect logic and mathematical minds. If they could not solve this problem, then perhaps no one could." Cathara felt a cold fear creep through his body. The Void Swarm had already consumed 12 star systems. Billions of lives were gone, turned into raw material for the enemy's endless hunger. "Sir," called Lieutenant Yorth from the communications station, "we are receiving a priority message from the Altarian High Council." The main screen changed to show the image of Counselor Lyrish, her crystalline features glowing within her. Light, even through the transmission, Cathara could see the fear in her ancient eyes. "Admiral Cathara," she began, her melodic voice carrying across space. "Our psychic networks have felt the death screams of entire worlds. The Void Swarm grows stronger with each victory. We estimate you have perhaps 36 hours before they reach the core systems." 36 hours. Cathara felt his hearts skip a beat. The core systems contained over 50 billion souls across 7 worlds. The thought of losing so many lives made him sick. "Counselor, what about the new weapons from the Nexari research stations? The quantum disruptors were supposed to be ready for field testing." Lyra shook her head sadly. "The void entities adapt too quickly. They absorbed our quantum energy and used it to grow larger. Admiral, we must consider all options now, even the most unthinkable ones." Cathara knew what she meant. In the corner of his command center sat a communication terminal that had not been used in over 50 years. It bore the crude symbol of Earth, a simple blue and green sphere that looked primitive compared to the elegant symbols of the true galactic powers. The humans had been asking for full membership in the Galactic Federation for decades. They had the numbers, over 8 billion of them spread across dozens of worlds. They had resources and manufacturing ability that impressed even the Centaurans. But they also had something that made the advanced species uncomfortable. They had violence. Human history was written in blood and war. Where other species had evolved beyond physical conflict, humans still celebrated their warriors and built monuments to their battles. They carried weapons even in peacetime and spoke casually of death and destruction. The Federation had voted many times to keep them as associate members only, useful for mining and basic labor, but too dangerous for real responsibility. "You cannot be serious about contacting them," said Commander Vextel. "Humans are barely above the level of animals. Their technology is primitive. Their ships are slow and crude. And yet they have more ships than any other 3 species combined," Hadar replied quietly. "Commander, bring up the human military reports." The screen filled with data that most Federation officers tried to ignore. The humans had over 800 military vessels spread across their territory. Most were small by galactic standards, but they were numerous, and their crews were known for being absolutely fearless in battle. "Sir, their weapons are kinetic projectiles and chemical explosives," Maxtell protested. "They still use nuclear fusion for power. Their computers are made of metal and silicon instead of living crystal. How could such primitive tools help us against an enemy that has defeated our best technology?" Cathara studied the reports more carefully. The humans had fought dozens of wars among themselves before joining the galactic community. Even now, they maintained massive military forces and trained constantly for battle. While other species had found peaceful solutions to their problems, humans still settled disputes with organized violence. It was barbaric. It was primitive. It was also exactly what the Federation needed right now. "Open a channel to Earth Central." "Command," Cathara ordered. "Sir, the other admirals will not approve. The Altarians find human thoughts too chaotic to read clearly. The Centaurans cannot understand their illogical decision-making. The Nexari say human emotions interfere with proper energy flow. If we bring humans into this battle, we risk what, Commander? Looking bad in front of our graves?" Cathara's voice carried the authority of command. "Send the message." The communication array hummed to life, sending signals across hundreds of light years to the human home system. It would take several minutes for the transmission to reach Earth and several more for a reply. Cathara used the time to study what little data the Federation had on human military capabilities. The reports made for interesting reading. Humans had developed their technology along completely different lines than the rest of the galaxy. Where? Other species had mastered energy manipulation and quantum mechanics. Humans had focused on raw power and brute force engineering. Their ships were built like fortresses, designed to take damage and keep fighting. Their weapons were simple but devastating. "Incoming transmission from Earth," Lieutenant Yorth announced. The screen flickered and showed the face of a human female. She had short dark hair and brown eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. Her uniform was plain gray fabric with simple metal badges. Compared to the flowing robes and crystal armor of other species, she looked almost primitive. "This is Commander Sarah Chun of Earth Defense Command," she said in the harsh, guttural language humans called English. The translation system made her words understandable, but could not hide the aggressive undertones. "We received your emergency transmission, Admiral. What do you need?" Cathara felt his pride rebel against what he was about to do. For over 200 years, his people had led the galaxy's military forces. They had brought peace and order to dozens of species. Now he was going to ask for help from creatures that most civilized beings considered barely above savages. "Commander Chun, the Federation faces an existential threat. An enemy from outside our galaxy has destroyed multiple star systems. Our conventional forces have proven ineffective. We require additional ships for a final defensive action." The human's expression did not change, but something shifted in her eyes. Cathara had seen that look before, in the eyes of predators that had caught the scent of prey. "How many ships do you need, Admiral?" "All of them." Commander Chun was quiet for several seconds. When she spoke again, her voice was carefully controlled. "I see. And what role would human forces play in this defensive action?" Cathara forced himself to meet her gaze through the screen. "Front-line assault. Your ships would engage the enemy first, while our main forces position for the primary attack." He did not say what they both knew. He was asking humans to die so that more valuable species could live. He was asking them to serve as a shield of flesh and metal while the real military forces prepared to fight. "I understand, Admiral. Earth Command will mobilize our entire fleet. We can have 300 ships ready for departure within 12 hours. 300 ships? More than Cathara had dared to hope for. But looking at the calm expression on the human commander's face, he wondered if he had just made a terrible Mistake. There was something in her eyes that suggested she understood exactly what he was asking for, and that she was planning to give him far more than he had bargained for. The space around Kepler 442 looked like a graveyard. Broken pieces of alien ships drifted slowly through the darkness, their once beautiful hulls torn apart by weapons that consumed matter itself. Admiral Cathara stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the debris field grow larger with each passing hour. "Sir, another Centauran destroyer just went dark," reported Commander Vextel. His voice had lost all emotion over the past 3 days of constant retreat. "That leaves us with 42 operational vessels out of the original 200. Cathara nodded without looking away from the main screen. The Void Swarm had pushed them back across 3 star systems in less than a week. Every battle ended the same way. The aliens would fight bravely, using their most advanced weapons and tactics. The Void entities would adapt and grow stronger. Then the aliens would run, leaving behind more dead friends and broken dreams. Movement on the outer sensor grid, called Lieutenant Yorth. Multiple contacts dropping out of faster-than-light travel. The main screen shifted to show the edge of the system. Cathara felt his heart sink as he saw the approaching ships. They were huge and blocky, with none of the elegant curves that marked proper starship design. Thick armor plates covered every surface, and strange metal tubes stuck out at odd angles. They looked more like flying fortresses than spaceships. "Identification confirms human vessels, sir. I count ... 297 ships total. 297. Cathara had expected perhaps 50 human vessels at most. The Federation records showed that humans had ships, but no one had bothered to count them carefully. Now he was looking at a fleet larger than anything the galaxy had seen in over a century. "Sir, receiving communication from the human fleet," Lieutenant Yorth announced. The screen changed to show Commander Chun's face again. She looked exactly the same as she had 12 hours ago, but now Cathara could see the bridge behind her. It was cramped and dark, filled with screens showing numbers and symbols instead of the flowing artistic displays preferred by civilized species. Human crew members moved quickly between stations, all wearing the same gray uniforms and serious expressions. "Admiral Cathara, this is Commander Chun aboard the Earth vessel Normandy. Human Expeditionary Fleet has arrived as requested. You are ready to receive battle orders." "Commander Chun," Cathara began, trying to keep the surprise out of his voice. "Your fleet is larger than we expected. This is ... unexpected." Chun's expression did not change. "Earth takes threats to galactic peace seriously, Admiral. We brought everything we could spare from home defense." Cathara studied the human ships on his tactical display. They were arranged in a loose formation that made no sense according to proper military doctrine. Advanced species flew in precise, geometric patterns that allowed for maximum efficiency and coordination. The humans looked like they were just scattered randomly through space. "Commander, we need to discuss your role in the coming battle. The Void Swarm is approximately 6 hours away from this position. Our combined fleet will make a final stand here to protect the core systems." "Understood, Admiral." "What are your orders?" Cathara felt uncomfortable with what he was about to say, but there was no choice. The human ships were clearly not built for advanced tactics. Their weapons appeared to be simple kinetic devices, metal projectiles fired by chemical or magnetic force. Against an enemy that could absorb energy and adapt quantum weapons, such primitive tools would be useless. Human vessels will form the first line of defense. Your ships will engage the void entities as they enter the system, drawing their attention and forcing them to commit their forces. This will allow our main battle groups to position for decisive strikes against their command vessels." Sean was quiet for several seconds. Around her, the human bridge crew continued their work, but Cathara noticed that several of them had stopped to listen. Their faces showed no emotion, but something in their posture suggested they understood exactly what was being asked of them. "You want us to be bait," Chun said finally. "I would not use that term, Commander. Your forces will serve as the advance guard, engaging the enemy while more advanced units prepare for the primary assault." "Bait," Chun repeated. "How long do you need us to hold them?" "Preliminary estimates suggest 20 to 30 minutes should be sufficient for proper positioning." Chun nodded slowly. "I see. Admiral, may I ask what casualties you expect from this advance guard action?" Cathara felt his mouth go dry. The question was reasonable, but no civilized commander would ask it so directly. Advanced species preferred to discuss such matters in abstract terms, using mathematics and probability theory to avoid thinking about actual death. Combat projections are difficult to calculate precisely, he said carefully. "Admiral, my people need to know what they're walking into. What percentage of human ships do you expect to survive the first 30 minutes? The brutal directness of the question made Cathara uncomfortable. But looking at Chun's calm face, he realized she was not going to accept a diplomatic non-answer. "Computer projections suggest 20 to 30% survival rate for forward units," he admitted. Nodded again. "So you expect 70 to 80% of my people to die in the first half hour of battle?" "Commander, I understand this is difficult to accept, but no, Admiral, it's fine. We understand the situation." Chun's voice was perfectly steady. "Human fleet accepts the mission. We'll hold the line for 30 minutes. Kefir blinked in surprise. He had expected protests, demands for better positioning, or at least requests for additional support. Instead, the human commander had simply accepted a mission that would likely kill most of her people. "Are you certain, Commander? Perhaps we could discuss alternative formations." "Admiral, with respect, we know what you're asking us to do." "You need something to slow down the enemy while you get ready for the real fight. We can do that." The transmission ended, leaving Cathara staring at a blank screen. Around him, his bridge crew worked in uncomfortable silence. Commander Vextel finally spoke what they were all thinking. "Sir, are we really going to send them to die like that?" "They are volunteers, Commander, and their sacrifice may save billions of lives in the core systems." But even as he said it, Cathara felt a strange unease. Something about the human commander's reaction bothered him. She had accepted the mission too easily, with too little emotion. In his experience, species facing certain death usually showed fear, anger, or at least sadness. Chun had shown nothing except calm professionalism. On the tactical display, the human fleet was moving into position. Their ships spread out in a loose line across the system's outer edge, facing the direction from which the void swarm would arrive. They moved slowly compared to more advanced vessels, but they moved with purpose. "Sir, the humans are requesting permission to launch reconnaissance drones," Lieutenant Yorth reported. "Granted, though I doubt their primitive sensors will detect anything our systems have missed." As the human drones spread out through space, Cathara studied the enemy approach vector. The void swarm was still hours away, but their energy signature was growing stronger. Soon they would arrive in overwhelming numbers, hungry for the destruction of everything in their path. The Admiral forced himself to stop thinking about the humans who would die in the coming battle. War required difficult choices, and the needs of the many outweighed the needs of the few. The human ships were expendable. Their technology was primitive, their tactics simple, and their strategic value limited. Better to lose them than the advanced vessels that would be needed for the real fight. But as he watched the human fleet take position, Admiral Cathara could not shake the feeling that he was missing something important. The humans had accepted a suicide mission without question. They had brought nearly 300 ships to a fight they knew they could not win. And their commander had shown no fear When told that most of her people would die, in his long military career, Cathara had learned to trust his instincts. Right now, those instincts were telling him that the humans were not what they seemed. But with the void swarm approaching and time running out, he had no choice but to proceed with the plan. He could only hope that the sacrifice of the human fleet would buy enough time for a miracle. The first warning came from the long-range sensors at exactly 0347 hours, ship time. Lieutenant Yorth's voice cut through the quiet tension on the bridge like a knife through flesh. Contact. Multiple large objects dropping out of faster than light. Travel at the system edge. Distance 47 million kilometers and closing. Admiral Cathara moved to the tactical display, his forearms working quickly to bring up detailed sensor readings. What he saw made his blood run cold. The void swarm had arrived in force. Over 60 massive vessels, each one larger than his flagship. Behind them came countless smaller entities, moving in perfect coordination like a school of deadly fish. All ships, battle stations, Cathara ordered. This is not a drill. Throughout the fleet, alien crews rushed to their positions. On Centauran vessels, logic computers began calculating firing solutions and defensive patterns. Altarian ships glowed, brighter as their psychic crews linked minds for coordinated action. The elegant Nexari energy beings prepared their quantum weapons for battle. At the edge of the system, the human fleet waited in their crude formation. Their ships looked tiny compared to the approaching void entities, like metal insects facing a pack of space-borne giants. Cathara felt a moment of regret for what was about to happen to those brave, stupid humans. Time to contact, 18 minutes, Vextel reported. The void swarm is moving faster than previous encounters. Estimated speed increase of 23%. They are learning, Cathara muttered. Each battle teaches them more about our tactics. On the main screen, the approaching enemy looked like a moving nightmare. The void entities were not built like normal ships. Instead, they appeared to be living creatures that had grown into the shape of spacecraft. Their hulls pulsed with organic rhythms, and strange tendrils waved in the vacuum of space. Some were covered in what looked like scales or armor plates made from consumed starship metal. Sir, receiving transmission from Commander Chun, Lieutenant Yorth announced. The screen split to show the human commander's face. Behind her, the bridge was now lit with red warning lights, and crew members moved with quick efficiency. Chun herself looked completely calm, as if she was about to go for a peaceful walk instead of leading her people into certain death. Admiral, we have visual contact with the enemy fleet. Request permission to begin engagement. Commander, the enemy is still 16 minutes away from your position. There is no need to. Admiral, with respect, my weapons have longer range than your sensors might suggest. We can begin harassing fire now and start wearing them down before they reach close combat range. Cathara frowned. Human weapons were supposed to be primitive kinetic projectiles with limited range. How could they possibly reach targets that were still millions of kilometers away? Commander, your weapon systems cannot possibly, Sean's image was replaced by a view from one of the human ships. Cathara watched in amazement as massive metal tubes along the ship's side began to move. They were enormous. Each one was at least 50 meters long and 10 meters wide. As he watched, the tubes elevated and turned to face the approaching enemy. What in the name of the ancients are those? Commander Vextel whispered before anyone could answer. The human ships opened fire. The weapons did not produce the elegant energy beams that civilized species preferred. Instead, they hurled solid metal projectiles into space at incredible speed. Each projectile was the size of a small vehicle, and they moved so fast that they appeared as brief streaks of light against the darkness. Impact in 47 seconds. Chan's voice said calmly over the communication channel. Cathara checked his sensors, not believing what he was seeing. The projectiles were moving at nearly 30% of light speed. At that velocity, even a small piece of metal would hit with the force of a nuclear weapon. Impossible, Vextel breathed. No kinetic weapon can achieve those velocities without massive power requirements. On the tactical display, the first wave of human projectiles reached the void swarm. Cathara expected to see small flashes as the primitive weapons were absorbed or deflected by the enemy's adaptive defenses. Instead, he watched in shock as 3 void entities simply exploded. The creatures that had shrugged off quantum disruptors and energy weapons were torn apart by simple metal slugs moving at incredible speed. Where the projectiles hit, massive holes appeared in the organic hulls. Strange fluids sprayed into space as the wounded entities writhed and died. Direct hits on 3 enemy vessels, Chun reported in the same calm voice. Continuing fire mission. The human fleet fired again and again. Each salvo sent dozens of projectiles screaming across space at impossible speeds. The void entities tried to adapt, growing thicker armor and changing their formation. Nothing worked. The kinetic energy was too much for their biological systems to absorb or redirect. How are they doing this? Cathara demanded of his science officer. Sir, preliminary analysis suggests they are using magnetic acceleration systems far more advanced than anything in our database. The power requirements should be enormous, but somehow they are managing continuous fire. On the screen, the human ships had become a wall of flashing light as their weapons fired over and over. The crude, blocky vessels no longer looked primitive. They looked like what they really were, weapons of war built by a species that had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of killing. The void swarm was in chaos. Entities that had never known defeat were dying in large numbers, torn apart by weapons they could not understand or counter. Their perfect coordination began to break down as fear and confusion spread through their collective mind. Sir, the enemy is changing course, Vextel reported with amazement in his voice. They are moving to avoid the human firing zone. It was true. The unstoppable void swarm was actually trying to run away from the human fleet. They had faced the most advanced weapons in the galaxy without fear, but these primitive projectiles terrified them. All human vessels. This is Admiral Cathara, he said into his communicator. Outstanding work, Commander Chun. Continue engaging at your discretion. Thank you, Admiral. But we are just getting started. Chun's words sent a chill down Cathara's spine. If this was just the beginning, what else were the humans hiding? He got his answer a few minutes later when the void swarm tried a new tactic. Unable to approach directly, they began splitting into smaller groups, trying to surround the human fleet and attack from multiple directions. The human response was immediate and devastating. Ships throughout their formation launched what appeared to be small fighter craft, but as they got closer to the enemy, Cathara realized they were not manned vehicles at all. They were missiles, but missiles unlike anything he had ever seen. Each missile was the size of a small starship and moved with the agility of a living creature. They swarmed around the void entities like angry insects, avoiding return fire with impossible grace. When they struck their targets, the explosions were so bright that the main screen had to dim automatically to protect the crew's eyes. Nuclear warheads, Chun explained when Cathara asked. Each one carries a 50-megaton fusion device. We call them Prometheus missiles. 50 megatons. Most civilized species had banned such weapons centuries ago as too destructive for civilized warfare. The humans not only built them, they fired them by the dozen without hesitation. The battle was turning into a massacre, but not the massacre Cathara had expected. Instead of watching brave human crews die heroically, he was watching the most feared enemy in galactic history get systematically destroyed by weapons that should not have been able to hurt them. Sir, Commander Vextel said quietly. "Perhaps we should reconsider our assessment of human military capabilities." Cathara nodded, unable to take his eyes off the tactical display. The primitive, backward humans had just done something that the combined fleets of 6 advanced species could not do. They had made the Void Swarm afraid, and they were just getting started. The destruction of the Void Swarm was beautiful and terrible to watch. Admiral Cathara had seen many battles in his long career, but nothing like this. The enemy that had consumed entire star systems was being torn apart by weapons that most civilized species considered ancient and crude. 43 enemy vessels destroyed, Commander Vextel reported, his voice filled with disbelief. 17 more showing critical damage. The humans have eliminated over 60% of the Void Swarm in less than 20 minutes. On the tactical display, the remaining Void entities were scattered across the system, no longer moving in their perfect formations. Some tried to flee toward the edge of the system, while others attempted desperate attacks on the human fleet. None of it worked. The human ships moved like hunting wolves, coordinating their attacks with deadly precision. "Sir, we are receiving reports from all Federation vessels," Lieutenant Yorth announced. Admiral Vexon of the Centauran fleet reports that his logic computers cannot explain what they are observing. Counselor Lyrish says her psychic abilities are being overwhelmed by human combat emotions. Cathara nodded without surprise. He could feel it too, the raw aggression and joy coming from the human fleet. While other species fought with careful calculation and reluctant necessity, the humans seemed to actually enjoy the battle. Their communications were filled with strange war cries and celebration as they destroyed their enemies. Contact from Commander Chun, sir. The main screen showed the human commander again. Her face was flushed with excitement, and her eyes held a wild light that made Cathara unconsciously step backward. Behind her, the human bridge crew worked with savage efficiency, calling out targets and coordinating attacks with frightening enthusiasm. "Admiral Cathara, we have the main enemy force contained. Request permission to begin Phase 2 operations." "Phase 2? Cathara asked. "Commander, what is Phase 2? Chun's smile was not reassuring. "Close-range combat, sir. We have some new toys we would like to test." Before Cathara could respond, the human fleet began to move. Instead of maintaining their safe distance, the ships accelerated toward the remaining Void entities. This was madness. Every military doctrine in the galaxy emphasized the importance of range in space combat. Getting close to the enemy meant exposing yourself to their most dangerous weapons. "Commander Chun, I strongly advise against close engagement. The Void entities have demonstrated powerful energy absorption abilities at short range. Admiral, with respect, we know what we are doing." The human ships closed distance rapidly, their blocky forms moving with surprising grace through the debris field. As they approached the enemy, new weapons began to emerge from their hulls. Strange metal arms unfolded from hidden compartments, and massive drill-like devices extended from the ship's fronts. "What in the name of the ancestors are those?" Vextel whispered Dot. They got their answer when the first human ship reached a wounded Void entity. Instead of firing missiles or energy weapons, the human vessel simply rammed into the creature at full speed. The drill-like device at the ship's front tore through the organic hull like it was made of soft tissue, but the ramming attack was just the beginning. Once the human ship was locked inside the Void entity, the metal arms began to work. They carried massive cutting tools that sliced through the creature's internal structure, destroying vital organs and support systems. Within minutes, the massive entity was dead, its body drifting lifeless through space. "They are boarding the enemy vessels," Cathara said in amazement. "They are fighting hand-to-hand inside the creatures." It was insane. No civilized species would consider such brutal, direct combat. The idea of actually entering an enemy vessel and fighting with handheld weapons was something from primitive history, not modern warfare, and yet it was working perfectly. Human ship after human ship engaged in these boarding actions, tearing the void entities apart from the inside. The creatures had no defense against such tactics, because no species had ever been crazy enough to try them before. "Sir, we are picking up audio transmissions from inside the void entities," Lieutenant Yorth reported nervously. "Put it on speaker." The bridge filled with the sounds of combat. Human voices shouted orders and battle, cries over the noise of gunfire and explosions. The weapons they were using inside the creatures were clearly not the advanced energy devices preferred by other species. They were chemical explosives and kinetic firearms, weapons that made loud noises and caused massive physical damage. Sector 7 cleared, moving to the next compartment. "Watch out for that tentacle thing. Hit it with the flamethrower." Core. Chamber located. Deploying nuclear charges. Nuclear charges. The humans were using nuclear weapons inside the enemy vessels, at point-blank range with their own people. It was beyond reckless. It was completely insane. "Admiral," Commander Chun's voice came over the communication system. "We have successfully boarded and destroyed 8 enemy vessels. Estimate complete victory within 30 minutes. Commander, your people are using nuclear weapons in confined spaces. The radiation exposure alone should be fatal. Our armor provides adequate protection, sir. We have been preparing for this type of combat for a long time." As if to prove her point, another void entity exploded from the inside as human nuclear charges detonated in its core. The explosion was so bright that it lit up half the system, but the human ship that had delivered the charges emerged from the blast, apparently undamaged. Cathara realized that he was watching something unprecedented in galactic history. The humans had not just defeated the Void Swarm. They had done it using tactics that no other species would even consider. While the rest of the galaxy had evolved beyond physical violence, humans had perfected it into an art form. "Sir, the remaining enemy vessels are attempting to retreat," Vextel reported. On the tactical display, the last few void entities were indeed trying to flee. These creatures that had never known defeat were running away from an enemy they could not understand or counter, but the humans were not done with them. "All human vessels, this is Commander Chun. Begin pursuit operations. No enemy vessel leaves this system alive." The human fleet spread out like a net, cutting off the escape routes. Their ships moved with purpose and coordination that surprised even Cathara. For beings that were supposed to be primitive and chaotic, they certainly knew how to work together when it mattered. The chase did not last long. One by one, the fleeing void entities were hunted down and destroyed. Some were torn apart by the massive kinetic weapons. Others were boarded and blown up from the inside. A few tried to surrender, but the humans showed no mercy. "Last enemy. Vessel destroyed," Chun reported with satisfaction. "System is clear of hostile forces." Cathara looked at the tactical display in stunned silence. Where there had once been over 60 massive void entities, there was now only empty space and drifting debris. The enemy that had destroyed entire civilizations had been completely eliminated in less than 2 hours. "Casualty report from the human fleet," Lieutenant Yorth announced quietly. "How many ships did they lose?" Cathara asked, dreading the answer. "None, sir. The humans report 0 ships destroyed and minimal damage to their vessels. Total human casualties are listed as 43 wounded, none killed, 0 ships lost. Against an enemy that had destroyed 3 Federation battle groups without taking significant damage, the humans had suffered no losses at all." "Admiral," Commander Chun's voice came over the communication system again. "Human fleet requests permission to begin salvage operations." We would like to study the enemy technology for future reference. Cathara found his voice after several seconds. Permission granted, Commander. And ... thank you. You have saved billions of lives today. Just doing our job, sir. Earth is proud to serve alongside our Federation allies. As the communication ended, Cathara realized that everything had changed. The humans were not primitive savages who could be used as cannon fodder. They were the most effective military force the galaxy had ever seen. And now they knew it too. For the first time since the battle began, Admiral Cathara felt afraid. But not of the Void Swarm. They were all dead. He was afraid of what came next. The celebration aboard the Federation vessels was unlike anything Admiral Cathara had ever witnessed. Throughout the combined fleet, alien crews who had expected to die were instead cheering their impossible victory. The Void Swarm was completely destroyed. The core systems were safe, and billions of lives had been saved, all because of the humans. Cathara watched the human fleet through his main screen as they continued their salvage operations. Their blocky ships moved efficiently through the debris field, collecting pieces of destroyed void entities for study. The same vessels that had looked crude and primitive just hours ago now seemed like instruments of perfect destruction. Sir, we are receiving congratulations from all Federation worlds, Lieutenant Yorth reported with obvious joy. The High Council is calling this the greatest military victory in galactic history. Indeed it is, Cathara replied, though his voice lacked enthusiasm. Commander Vextel noticed his superior's mood. Sir, is something wrong? We have won a complete victory with minimal losses. That is exactly the problem, Commander. Cathara turned away from the screen, his forearms clasped behind his back. He had been thinking hard during the past hour, and his thoughts were not pleasant. The humans had just demonstrated military capabilities that far exceeded anything the Federation possessed. They had destroyed an enemy that had defeated the best fleets of 6 advanced species combined. What did that mean for the future of galactic civilization? Sir, incoming priority transmission from the human fleet, Lieutenant Yorth announced. Put it through. Commander Chun appeared on the screen, her face still flushed with the excitement of battle. Behind her, human crew members continued their work with obvious satisfaction. They looked like hunters who had just completed a successful hunt. Admiral Cathara, preliminary analysis of the enemy vessels is complete. Our science teams have some very interesting findings to share with Federation researchers. We think this technology could revolutionize our understanding of biomechanical engineering. Excellent work, Commander. Your fleet's performance today has been ... remarkable. Thank you, sir. My people are proud to have served alongside our Federation allies. Admiral, there is one more thing. Our long-range sensors have detected 3 more void swarm groups approaching from different directions. They are still several days away, but we wanted to give you advance warning. More void entities. Cathara felt his heart skip a beat. Even after this devastating defeat, the enemy was not finished. But as he looked at Chun's calm expression, he realized she was not afraid of the new threat. Commander, do you believe your fleet can handle additional enemy forces? Without question, sir. Now that we understand their capabilities and weaknesses, we can develop even more effective tactics. The next battles will be easier than this one. Chun signed off, leaving Cathara staring at a blank screen. The human commander had just casually dismissed a threat that had terrified the entire galaxy. She spoke of fighting more void swarms, like she was discussing routine training exercises. That was when the full magnitude of the situation hit him. The humans were not just effective fighters, they were too effective. They had capabilities that made every other military force in the galaxy obsolete. They had weapons that could destroy any enemy, tactics that no one could counter, and a willingness to use violence that other species had evolved beyond. More, Importantly, they now knew how powerful they really were. Commander Vextel, prepare a secure communication to Federation Command. Priority Alpha classification. Yes, sir. What should I tell them? Tell them we need to discuss the human situation. Immediately. But before Vextel could send the message, another communication came through from the human fleet. This time, it was not Chun, but a different human officer. A male with gray hair and cold eyes. Admiral Cathara, this is Captain Morrison of the Earth vessel Gettysburg. Commander Chun has asked me to coordinate our next phase of operations with your command staff? Next phase? Yes, sir. Now that we have secured this system, we need to plan our advance against the remaining Void Swarm groups. Our strategic analysis suggests we should take the fight to them before they can organize a proper counterattack. Cathara blinked in surprise. The humans wanted to continue fighting. They were not content with their defensive victory. They wanted to hunt down and destroy every remaining enemy. Captain Morrison, I appreciate your enthusiasm, but such operations would require extensive planning and coordination with Federation Command. We cannot simply, Admiral, with respect, we do not have time for extensive planning. Every hour we wait gives the enemy more time to adapt and prepare. We should strike while we have the advantage. The human captain's tone was polite but firm. He was not asking for permission. He was informing Cathara of what the humans intended to do. The realization sent a chill through the Zephyrian Admiral's body. Captain, I understand your eagerness to continue the fight, but tactical decisions of this magnitude must be approved by proper authorities. The Federation has protocols. Admiral, Morrison interrupted. The Federation protocols just got 300 billion sentient beings killed across 12 star systems. Our protocols just saved this entire sector. Which approach would you prefer? We follow? The brutal directness of the statement left Cathara speechless. The human was right, and they both knew it. Federation military doctrine had failed, completely against the Void Swarm. Only human methods had worked. That was the moment when Admiral Cathara made the mistake that would change galactic history forever. His pride, already wounded by his species' military failure, could not accept the implication that humans were superior to the advanced civilizations of the Federation. The idea that these primitive warriors might dictate strategy to their betters was unthinkable. Captain Morrison, I understand that your recent success may have given you confidence in your abilities. However, I must remind you that this was a single engagement against a limited enemy force. Your tactics, while effective, were crude and wasteful. Under proper Federation guidance, such methods could be refined and improved. The silence that followed lasted several seconds. When Morrison spoke again, his voice was very quiet. I see. And what kind of guidance did you have in mind, Admiral? Well, naturally your fleet would be integrated into our command structure as auxiliary forces. Your people have shown promise as shock troops, and with proper training and discipline, they could become valuable assets to Federation military operations. Another long silence. Auxiliary forces, Morrison repeated slowly. Yes, think of it as an honor, Captain. Few species earn the right to serve directly under Federation command. Your ships would be assigned to forward assault roles, where your aggressive tactics would be most useful. Cathara was pleased with how diplomatic he sounded. He was offering the humans a place in the galactic military structure, recognition of their abilities, and important responsibilities. Any reasonable species would be grateful for such an opportunity. Morrison's response was not what he expected. Admiral, let me make sure I understand this correctly. You are suggesting that the fleet that just saved your entire civilization should now serve as subordinate auxiliaries under your command? Captain, I would not put it in such crude terms, but essentially, yes. The Federation has centuries of experience in military coordination and strategic planning. Human forces would benefit greatly from such guidance. I see. Morrison paused. Again, Admiral, please hold for a moment while I consult with my commanding officer. The screen went dark. Cathara turned to Commander Vextel with satisfaction. There, you see, a firm but fair approach. The humans need to understand their place in the larger galactic community. Sir, Vextel said nervously, perhaps we should reconsider this approach. The humans just demonstrated capabilities far beyond our own. Maybe we should treat them as equals rather than subordinates. Nonsense, Commander. Military effectiveness alone does not determine political standing. The Federation was built by civilized species with thousands of years of cultural development. We cannot allow primitive warriors to dictate policy simply because they are good at fighting. The screen flickered back to life, but this time it showed Commander Chun instead of Captain Morrison. Her expression was completely calm, but something in her eyes made Cathara's blood run cold. Admiral Cathara, she said in a voice like ice, I understand you have some thoughts about the future role of human forces in Federation military operations. Commander Chun, Captain Morrison, and I were discussing integration procedures. Admiral, let me stop you right there. Are you seriously suggesting that the fleet that just saved your worthless hides should now take orders from the people who led 3 battle groups to complete destruction? The blunt hostility in Chun's voice shocked Cathara. This was not the respectful subordinate he had been speaking with hours earlier. Commander, I understand you may be emotional after the battle, but emotional? Chun's voice cut through his words like a blade. Admiral, I am perfectly calm. Computer, execute Protocol Omega. All human vessels, new target priorities now. In effect, throughout the human fleet, weapons that had just finished destroying the Void Swarm began to turn. The massive kinetic cannons and missile